welcome again to Choices Global. I'm Dr. Salisha Pariag, and Choices Global is a production of First Assembly of God, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana. 2 weeks ago, we commenced a discussion on finding financial freedom in the family. And we talked about stewardship. And out of that discussion, we had a number of issues that were raised from our esteemed guests who are joining us again today, Mr. and Mrs. Christopher Roberts, who have been married now for 20 years. I hope I got that correct. Mr. and Mrs. Rawl Duncan, celebrating 12 years of marriage and parents of four children. And our regular hosts, the Corbins, Mr. and Mrs. Kurt Corbin, who joins us from Geneva, Switzerland, and have been married for 17 years and parents to three boys. And together we want to continue our discussion looking at finding financial freedom in the family. Welcome to our panelists again to let us continue this discussion. The last time we met, we discussed saving, we discussed planning, we talked about discipline, we talked about finding our financial identity. But I want us to pivot a bit today in today's discussion. And we're looking specifically to diligence and hard work. And we started to mention that in our last segment. In this segment, to our parents, especially those with their teenagers, the Roberts and the Corbins. How can parents teach their children about money management and foster good financial habits from an early age? We'll start with the Corbins, since you have teenagers and a younger son.
Well, Dr. Salisha, this is a very good question. And the first thing I would want to suggest to our viewers is that as we try to teach our children, they will not listen to us. Our children read us, meaning they look at our example, our attitudes, how we behave, how we respond with finances. And trust me, they are so if they see that at the beginning of the month, you're splurging on food, and at the end of the month, you're hungry, they already have figured out how you're operating, and only two things will happen. They'll mimic us, or they will determine that that is not the road that they want to go down. So this is the first suggestion that I want to make. The second one is still we must talk to them. We must give them examples of why we're doing this and why we're doing that. And so we have found with our teenage boys, but also with the little one, that we have indicated ballpark how much we make, what we are spending on, what we're investing in, where we need to cut down. And maybe finally, one thing that we did is we gave them in this part of the world, you can have your debit and credit cards very early as a child, I think from the age of 12 in Switzerland. So we opened cards for them very early, and what we've now even decided we will start to do is to give them additional money to their allowance so that they can go and pay a bill. I think it's powerful for a child to actually walk into the service provider, or in our context, the post office, and pay a bill so that they actually understand what is going on. I'll stop there for now and maybe ask her to add.
Why did you stop? You're doing fine. Raising teenage children, as Siobhan said, they look at us. From a young age, they learn by looking. So our behavior, our speech, our conduct needs to be above par or exemplary all the time. And we can talk as much as you would like, but they would mimic what we do, how we operate, how we behave, what we say. So in doing that, I'll just add a little bit. What I think and what we're trying to do now with them is that we give them financial independence. In that, they must learn how to feel. Learning how to fail doesn't mean that they'll go off on the catastrophic end and waste all of their finances, but they must and appreciate and explain to us why they did this or why they did not think of something else. So you give them that financial independence in that regard. So it's not mommy and daddy guiding them all the time, or mommy, it was mommy alone. guiding them all the time or daddy alone guiding them. Allow them to feel. Let them understand what living beneath your means or living, yes, living within your means mean. So these are all lessons that we teach them. Yes, the house does not have maybe fruits today, maybe milk today. Can they not go 1 week or 1 day without that? How can we, since we run out of milk, how can we correct this situation next month? So these are thoughts that they need to start sharing with us and yeah, sharing with us so we could know or they could understand what it takes to plan so that we will not run out, so that we do not fall short. And that when as they get older and as they get their own families, they have that appreciation already, so they have an head start. They wouldn't be starting like some of us did, starting from scratch. They have that experience and they'll be able to take that training into into with their family and raise their children. Dr. Salisha.
Thank you so much. Before the Roberts come in, I want to just highlight an example. I connect with a young lady in my family, and what I found that just on Chevron's point about letting them be aware of bill payments and letting them be aware of certain purchases. We took her to a store and she has her debit card already, which is another interesting thing. I'll talk
Mhm.
about that later. And we told her that if she wanted to purchase a piece of clothing, she was looking specifically for a pair of jeans, that she must pay it out of her debit card. That particular young lady decided that she had a pair of jeans at home that she could rewear, and she no longer needs to make a purchase. And I believe that helped. And she never did purchase. She went home, she found that old pair of jeans. It was fairly good, and she was able to wear that. And it taught her that not every time you need to go out, you go buy something new. If her mom was purchasing it, oh yes, of course. But when her money had to be paid, the money that was given to her, but she considered it hers on her debit card, had to be paid for that, made for that purchase, she automatically shifted priorities. And I think that is a critical thing. Exposing them to paying a bill, letting them understand what is the actual cost. They may turn off the lights more, turn off all the electronics that they have plugged in. But that was a sidebar to what Chevron and Kurt said. And just we're just giving practical advice on how we teach our children. In our last program, Raul mentioned generational wealth, and we want the wealth to stay within our families. And we can only accomplish that when our children can learn good saving practices, sometimes that we were not privy to. So, Roberts, tell us what you have done in your family to teach your girls about making financial decisions, sound financial decisions.
Well, Dr. Salisha, we have three girls and three teenage girls. So we're teaching them, to save and to spend and to budget. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's challenge, like the other panelists say, they don't listen. They mimic what you do. So, for instance, we try to teach them not every time you go on the road you have to purchase something. You know, you don't always have to be in every style, things like that. So, I would encourage them. We buy water weekly, the big 5 gallon bottle water. And so when you go on the road, you don't always have to be purchasing a small bottle of water, which we found was happening a lot in our family. We have these nice portable bottles. Walk with your water, walk with your snack. I teach them to make stuff. You have plantain chips. You could make it at home. You make your cookies. You make your cakes, all those little things. And so you don't have to be purchasing stuff on the road. That money that you could be using for something else, something else that is important. So you have to have that balance. Do things with your hands that could save you. Make things. Walk with your water, walk with your snack, refurbish your old clothes, mix and match. Those are the little things that we teach them, and they're doing quite well with it.
It has been challenging at the beginning, but as they're growing, they're learning because they're realizing that if I have to purchase something and I have to use my own allowance to do it, and my allowance cannot cover what it is that I want, well, then maybe these ideas that mommy was giving before, is going to help me in the long run.
Excellent.
Um, Dr. Salisha, just to add, piggyback, what Court would have said. What we've also found is that when you give, or even what you would have said, I should say, because when you give these children their own money now, let's say sometimes we're in the mall and say, okay, listen, you guys are going to have, you don't have to, you guys go right ahead. Here's your money. And then when they come back now, we set a time. Okay, we'll all meet up back at this time, X time, right? So when you get back now, you find you come back. Somebody come back with practically all the money. Some come back with half, and some come back with none. So when you find out the whole story, now you hear, oh no, I saw them buying, but I didn't really want to use that. I don't want it anymore. Or somebody said, oh well, I was about to go buy that, and then I found out, this thing is too much money. I ain't gonna spend my money on that. I gonna wait and save this one, and then the next time when I get more, I add it together. So that's the thing is about what we found is once they have their own money and they have to spend it on the things that they need, and as long as mommy and daddy ain't buying it, it suddenly becomes now a decision like, oh, do I really need this, or I don't do, or I don't need it right now. Then is when you realize, if you keep doing the buy-in, that's it. They'll never learn the responsibility. But once it's their money, it's a whole different ballgame.
Excellent. Yes. Um, that is so true. So true. Roland, Melinda, I know you have younger children, but what have you done? Smaller children. How have you started teaching them about money management?
So we have implemented first the tithing, and
Mm-hmm.
they get their little pocket change from grandparents and all the aunts and uncles and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So the older one understands the income. Well, the first two understands the income, money coming in,
Mm-hmm.
what they should do, and we taught them the principle of tithing, the 10% of which they
Good.
have to calculate it themselves. We don't we,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
we give them the example, but they do the calculation themselves. Now this is teaching the academic side of also, right, math and English and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And the older two are good with taking out their 10%. But what I'm not getting is that why I still have to buy the little things if you have the others. And they do it. So we taught them 10% saving, the 10% tithing, the 10% saving, and then they have that little 10%. It's a lot of 10%, and the little 10% for their the little nicks of which they don't need to spend. Um, but I can give real life situations. For example, 2 weeks ago, Rachel had a birthday party to attend, and she wanted me to take her to the mall, not her dad, me to take her to the mall to get what a gift for her friend. I had no trouble with that. When we were leaving, I said, "Did you collect your money from your dad?" She said, "No." And I said, "Go on quickly and get your money from your dad." He gave her $20. So we went into the store, and Rachel's basket was filled. So I reminded her, look at the back of each item and tell me, based on your items and the money you have, could weigh it out in your mind. Her face dropped. Long story short, she bought one item and I helped her with the other item. Because she, on the seeing it in practicality and in reality, and actually thinking, oh, I can do all this with this little bit of money or so much money. Um, so teaching them those principles is what we have done. They have their little saving, we call it piggy bank, but they have the little saving, whatever they call it, and they use it. But just somehow they still find the need to come to mom and dad for the money that they need.
Values, wants, and needs. That's
You got
how
it.
I would coin it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the 2 year old, I don't care. Once your children can understand and can say the word mine, they understand what value is.
Mm-hmm.
And is at that point you need to start teaching them to help them understand that things aren't free, that not everything that you see on
Mm-hmm.
TV or that you see someone else has, that is what you need to have. That is
Mm-hmm.
a want. Those can wait. And then you have those needs, those things that you really must have in your life. So, teaching small children, varying ages, we first teach them the value. Your toys. Your toys are not free. Even if your parent didn't give it to you or someone else gave it to you, this costs money, right? So they need to understand value, don't destroy things. And interestingly, from observing how they interact with their own things, you will have an understanding as a parent of the type of principles they will have towards
Mm-hmm.
finances. So some children you will know that you need to work probably a bit harder, and the other children you will know this guy can probably wing this thing pretty easily. I personally had a fondness for finances from a very young age. Probably even before I was 10 years old, I was going to pay bills. So my point is saying is if you see your children have an interest in finances, support that
Mm-hmm.
interest. Start teaching them about money earlier than others. You as a parent, you know your children individually, so you do want to see where their strengths are, see where their weaknesses are, and address those. You have a personal
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to those children to do that.
And one other thing too is that we show them their bank statements. No, we don't open it and show them that this is your balance in your account. But when the letter comes from when the letter, because you know they like to talk, when the letter comes from the bank and the monthly statements, we let them see their names on the letter, and they see that they see sometimes it's thick, sometimes it's thicker because it's building, and they see that they have, and we tell them that this is the money that you're saving. This is your saving. This is what you'll have access to when you are 21 or thereabout. So we let them know that
I
there
get
is a plan in place.
Yes.
excellent. And those are some very practical ideas on how we can begin teaching our children. And one other example, that same young lady, when she was much younger, I took her to I think it was a craft store, gave her a budget. And like Melinda, you said, she went and she picked up a whole bunch of things. I said, could you please check before you go to the
The
cashier,
prices.
check and
Mhm.
ensure that you can cover the cost because of the cash you have. She did her check and realized that she didn't have. She started kissing the things that she had and looking at me and putting them back as much to say, could you buy this? I'm like, no. And I said, you know what? You will cash out first. I'm not going to the cashier with you. You go to the
Whoa.
cashier. And she realized that she's like, could you buy this to me? I said, is it a need? And just to Rawls' point, is it a need or a want? And she quickly
Mhm.
recognized the things that she needed, and she was able to budget and just
Right.
buy the things that she had the money to cover. And those are some critical things. Modeling financial, being shrewd financially and modeling that before our children is critical, as Siobhan pointed out earlier. And that financial identity, as Raul, you pointed out, you figure out your children and you know who's spending more, who is more apt to the
Mhm.
spending and who's more apt to saving, and working those and helping them along the way. Those are some practical advice to our audience. And you can look within your families and you examine, you talk about money freely with your children, and you will recognize what they're thinking and how they're thinking about finances and about money. And then you can be able to guide them. So, parents, aunts, uncles, we all have a responsibility to be role
Yes.
models before our children when it comes to financial management. I know we had talked about this in our first program, but I just wanted us to do some practical examples or list some practical examples of how families effectively communicate about money matters and make financial decisions together? Should you include your children in some of those financial discussions? And at what age? How do you start? Raul, you said as soon as they said it's mine, you can bring them in. But Kurt and Chevon, how can families effectively communicate about money matters and make financial decisions together?
So I think if I'm to reflect on that, Celicia, it really influences from your own upbringing. And so it's
Hmm.
important for us to understand that, take away the good things from that, and improve on those things which we see an opportunity. And like Raul said, it resonated with me that I've been managing my family's finances since I was 8 years old. I was going to the market and I was telling my mom, this week we can afford what we would say tomato paste, which at that time was a delicacy. And there are other times when we'd have to use the local ingredients, like to our Guyanese, the Kaz because that was a cheaper sauce because it was locally made and sourced. And so, like Raul indicated, we must see when our children have an affinity for this and start to engage. Some of the things that we started to do was, for example, as I said, I talked to the boys when they were about 7 or 8. We had just moved to Switzerland, and we would have indicated to them that we are actually operating on a single income. So we moved. I was working. Kurt was now supporting the family as we transitioned. On a single income, there are some things we can have, there are others we can't. And I remember us coming to Geneva and having been accustomed to each of us driving our own vehicles to now using public transportation. And we intentionally did that for the children struggled when they had to go to football and it got cold in the winter, and these Caribbean children who not used to the snow and the cold, oh, they struggled. But this was something intentional that we did, so that we could, observe. And I think that was one thing that we taught them, that there are times when you need to strap it up and focus on your needs and not your wants. Another thing we would have informed them is, give an average of the bills, how much the rent or the mortgage is, how much it costs for food. And even when they were younger, this whole notion of delayed gratification and discipline, when we would go to the supermarkets, parents, that's the hardest thing to do, to take a child to the supermarket. So we had them ingrained that they would turn to us and say, Mommy, do you have money? Daddy, do you have money to afford this? So they knew they couldn't just walk into the supermarket and pick up any old thing that they wanted. So again, it comes back to Kurt's point on discipline. I think the final thing that we can do is really give them some focus on our vision as a family for the future. And so if you have a 5 year or a 10 year plan, this is where I am. It mightn't always be in the best place, but I think if I may drop that in there, financial freedom is about contentment, because you could have the world and still be unhappy. So it's really about contentment, focusing on what you have and being able not only to save and to plan, but also to give. I think that is another lesson that we should signal, because I remember with children asking every time we go home, why you all have so much gifts and chocolates, and why do we have to send Western Union? And so you explain to them that not only are you giving and helping family, but sometimes you don't know when those family members will be the ones helping you at some later point in time. So having a generosity plan, I think myself and Kurt went to a course and we struggled. We love to give, but when we thought of having a generosity plan according to God's idea for us to accumulate wealth, but also to redistribute it for our families, but also to others, I think those are important values that we must pass on to our children. Kurt?
You said it all, Siobhan. Dr. Salisha, I will just leave this with the audience and you. Financial indiscipline will lead many into debt. Everything that Siobhan just said, if we're not disciplined, we will fall into debt and we would not achieve that contentment and we always be struggling. So financial indiscipline, if we do not, will lead will lead many of us into debt. So if we do not teach our children everything that Siobhan just said and much, much more, we will fall into debt and we would not, they'll be ill prepared to deal with this world, Dr. Salisha.
Thank you. The Roberts, Siobhan just mentioned a generosity plan. Sometimes we don't plan for giving, but part of our financial plan and part of our financial success and financial freedom is making room to give back. How has that worked in your family?
Um, in our family, we give a lot. We
Mm,
um, we pack bags. You know, you make small hampers of whatever it is, however little it is. You make these hampers. What we started doing, we're introducing the children to it, and
mm,
so they're now the ones packing the bags.
got
So
you.
you go
Hmm.
through the cupboards, you pick out whatever it is that you have to pack these bags. We know how many bags, how many families we're giving to this month. So the children, they're tasked with that. All we do right now is supervise, you know.
Mm, mm,
So they're tasked with that. So they understand that giving is important, and they receive a lot of gifts. We receive a lot of gifts. You know, sometimes they would say, Mom, I see you have this. I can't remember when you purchased it. You know, where did you get this from? Okay, this is a gift. How somebody always giving you a gift? Because you gave. You gave, you
mm,
receive. Even if you don't receive, this is a part of you. You must find something to give out of the little that
yes.
you have. So I encourage them, you know, if you have two of the same thing, it's okay to give one. Find something to give somebody, you know, bless somebody.
Mm,
So right now they're the ones packing the bags at the end of the month, and we have
mm,
about it's about four families that we normally you know give to at the end of the month. We cater for,
got you.
and the
Yeah,
children are the ones who are tasked,
doing it.
and in doing that, make it look good too. So we have to
Yes.
purchase bags, you have to
The best.
get the right containers. Yes. For me, you don't have to do. Yes, we do. It has to look a
Yes.
particular because I'm a particular. If you're going to give somebody something, give them it good. You know, package it well.
Yes.
So they have to do
Hmm.
that. They're the ones tasked with that. So we're teaching them. It's not just about giving finances, or you give your time. You know, go
Hmm.
spend some time.
Volunteer. Correct.
Ask them when last you spoke to your grandmother, when last you visit your grandmother, go spend time there, see what it is that she has, you know, for you to help her with. So go spend some time. And they're the ones doing the packing now. So that's the way we incorporate them in the generosity segment.
Any comments from you, Christopher?
Oh, I just want to say, I didn't want to actually, keep adding it, but I think this thing started a while back in the sense that for our children when they were born, we just had to buy the basics, like things that they were. I had friends that provided stuff, cradles, food, clothing. I mean, it's like you had to handle what was handled at home. You know, but all these things came in, and I think it was as a result of the kind of giving that we would have given. you know so it is a case of you give and you get. And I always tell my children, to give you have to have an open hand. If you can't give like this, because this means you have nothing to receive, and if you withhold, you can't receive. Same for giving. So that's just
Excellent.
my little on that.
Roll and Melinda, your final thoughts on on a generosity plan as coined by Siobhan.
I think my life, my example, my family situations. I give them lots of examples, and one quick one that I would have shared with them, and Daddy shares all the time. Where we have our statutory vacations, and this one year he said I mean he invited us, and I'm going back to the question you asked: when do we involve the children? Where he invited us into his room to say we either buy computers for the community or we go on a vacation. No, come on. Anyway, we decided to get the computers for the community. From that simple act of generosity, we were able to see the blessings. We've been going on vacations ever since, never missed a beat. But it's just to show that we were contented with what we had. We understood generosity, weren't happy with it at that time, but as we grew, we understood how it works, and we teach our children it. Even the school system here encourages it because we have to, and I'm saying we have to pack tin drives, the cans with the canned foods, preserved foods. We have to pack baskets and send to the school for the less fortunate. And my children are willing and ready. They would give away everything. They're willing and ready to be a part of those. So, and they remind us, Mom, you remember we have friends who need something. And Mom, could you pack? No, we can't pack a lunch for them, but we can put together a bag of dry goods that their parents can prepare for them, and that's how they do it. So they're understanding generosity, they're understanding giving, and we don't give to receive. Here we don't give because when you give, you got to get back something. But we give because that's our commandment. That's what we want to do. That's the heart of God. And we give, and in turn we will be blessed. In turn we will be blessed. But we're not giving to receive.
It is truly more blessed to give than to
Correct.
receive. Um, I always come back to the fact that God He provides for you, right? So He gives you everything you need, and then He instructs you or He commands you is that you now are to reach back and help others.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time in our lives when we couldn't give. There was a time in our lives when we had to receive from people, right? So now that God has placed us in a situation whereby we're able to help others, I do not want to be
Miss a beat.
dishonoring,
Yep.
right? Because you must follow your heart, you must follow your conscience, you must
Mm-hmm.
follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. We were once in that position that we weren't able to give. Now we are. We don't want to be selfish.
Mm-hmm.
We want to, as Christians, we want to open our hands and give so that whatever God has in store to give to us, we can receive it and then
Mm-hmm.
redistribute it again. So that
Amen.
is our basic philosophy on giving.
Thank you so much. Siobhan and Kurt, your final thoughts as we wrap up part two of this discussion.
Spirit of generous giving will keep many of our brothers and sisters out of debt. A spirit
Yeah.
of generous giving will keep many of us out of debt. That is the principle we're trying to establish, and we hope our viewers have fully received and understood. A spirit, as Roy said, from your heart, a spirit of generous giving will keep many of us out
Mm-hmm.
of debt. You may wonder, how can I give out of the little that I have? Try it and you will see. Siobhan.
Wow. So for me, two things. One is, although we think about us teaching our children, I would want to challenge our viewers to consider learning from your children. We heard Melinda say the children remind her when it's time to prepare those baskets. And we just had one of our boys tell us that they won an investment competition. And he was telling me which are the stocks to invest in and why. And I was quite surprised, even though I am the financial guru, as I would want to term myself. The second is to share a little thing that we learned playing games with them like Monopoly. And could you go find out about the cash flow game from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series? I think that is a powerful game that can help families to articulate not only financial goals, but pitfalls as they go forward.
Yeah.
The cash flow game.
Wow. Well, we have heard quite a bit in this second installment. And by no means have we exhausted the discussion on finding financial freedom. But as we leave you in this segment, as we leave you, we're reminded of being positive role models. Number two, not being ashamed to be on the receiving end, and then
Mm-hmm.
not being selfish in giving back when you have reached that place, when the Lord has blessed you so that you can give. And as Chevron coined, creating a generosity plan. Sometimes being deliberate in our intentions of giving will
Mm-hmm.
help us and will help our children be better adults in our world. And we know our world need better individuals, better humans. We have that
Amen.
opportunity in creating those humans by just creating, by just tweaking some of our plans. And so to our audience, we want to thank you so much for joining us for part two of this journey as we explored finding financial freedom in the family. Special thanks to our panelists for sharing their practical solutions, shared experiences, and inspiration, and helping us to create a better financial future in our families. We extend our heartfelt appreciation to all of you for joining us and tuning in to Choices Global, a production of First Assembly of God, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana. And my final words, always remember to be kind. See you soon.